Bulavinaka, and a very good morning to all of you, and welcome to Fiji, in particular those of you visiting us for the first time. We have turned up the weather for you. If you were in Suva, you'd be wet by this stage, but welcome to Fiji. The Fijian government, of course, is pleased to host this co-host this high-level dialogue and workshop with the IMF on enhancing macroeconomic resilience on natural disasters and strengthening fiscal frameworks in the Pacific Islands. We also thank DFAT for supporting this event. It is important for our Pacific nations to meet and discuss issues affecting our region. We are small, vulnerable nations with much in common, and our growth, security, and development depend in no small part on our ability to work together and help each other. Of course, one of the most pressing challenges of the region, and the focus of this meeting, is our vulnerability to natural disasters, which scientific research indicates is being exacerbated by climate change. As our Honourable Prime Minister of Fiji continues to emphasize, there is a need for regional solidarity and commitment in addressing these important issues. Timely events such as this shed important light on a critical problem, expose us to strategies that have been used effectively and strategies that have failed in other parts of the world, and help focus and guide national efforts on building resilience. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to lose sight of what it means to build resilience in human terms. When we meet in such a setting as this, we use terms like build resilience in a very mantra type of way, cliched if you like. But we must never lose sight of the fact that we are not just talking about budgets and plans and processes. Resilience is about the ability of governments to serve the people when they need help the most. It is about the ability of government to cushion the economic and social impact of a natural disaster, a human-made catastrophe, or a health emergency. It is about the ability of governments to establish mechanisms that can be set in motion quickly to help people recover from adversity and resume their lives and their businesses. We talk about nations recovering from disasters, but it is always people who must recover. We all know that the Pacific nations are highly exposed to natural disasters, a position made worse by the onset of climate change. Our economies and our communities will increasingly become affected. For some of the islands, this is indeed already the reality. Fiji, of course, has suffered its share of natural disasters. In the last 2 decades, no fewer than 19 cyclones have assaulted us, the last one occurring in 2012. The total cost of these disasters were estimated at US $630 million, an average of around US $33 million per disaster. The worst ever to hit Fiji was Tropical Cyclone Evan in December 2012, which caused damages estimated at US $108 million and made flood control a very high priority for us. We've been fortunate enough to have sailed through 2013 and 2014 without any cyclones or major disasters, and we hope and pray that this will continue in 2015 and, of course, going forward too. Agriculture and tourism are critical sources of income and foreign exchange in most of our island economies, but these are also the sectors most vulnerable to cyclones and flooding, which then have a severe dampening effect on the entire economy. In Fiji's case, of course, tourism contributes about 35% towards our GDP. In addition, loss and damage to infrastructure can pose serious financial constraints for governments. Rebuilding damaged infrastructure requires both time and money. Generally, it takes several years for reconstruction, and in most cases, it is fair to say that rehabilitation work causes us either to take on additional debt or postpone other important projects. This adds to the national debt burden, makes it difficult to meet medium-term fiscal targets set by governments, and can have a dispiriting effect on the people who see their expectations for growth and improving living standards frustrated by events beyond their control. The Fijian government, just to talk a little bit about it, has done well to maintain budget deficits relatively low. On average, the budget deficit has been 2%, below 2% of GDP over the last 8 years. As a result, our debt level, currently at below 50% of GDP, remains manageable. We also expect that implementation of public financial management reforms in line with our public expenditure and financial accountability and debt management performance assessments will further strengthen our fiscal framework and yield better performance going forward. These efforts will help create the fiscal space needed to counter the shocks we know we will suffer eventually, including those arising from natural disasters. In this regard, I know the officials have been engaged in a workshop for the past 3 days in which the IMF, World Bank, and ADB and other development organizations shared their experience and expertise and offered strong technical advice. And as I was told earlier on this morning, that was actually the main show, not this one today. This, of course, ladies and gentlemen, complemented by the sharing of various country experiences, will certainly help our officials to develop more effective macroeconomic policy and more accurately forecast the budgets that will be required for maximum resiliency. The challenge, though, remains in the execution. In the end, we have policies, funds, and logistical infrastructure in place to carry out practical measures that will protect our people where possible, when possible, to limit the suffering if complete protection is impossible, and help people recover as quickly and effortlessly as possible. Natural disasters are risks that governments need to incorporate into their budget and fiscal framework. In Fiji, we have some existing financial provisions to mitigate disaster risk. On the fiscal front, government provides yearly funding to a disaster rehabilitation fund that is used to provide immediate relief. We also encourage the private sector to contribute towards the disaster rehabilitation fund by providing a 150% tax deduction incentive for voluntary cash contributions by businesses. Further, in the 2015 budget, the Fijian government introduced a 200% tax deduction for voluntary cash contributions by taxpayers towards a farmer's emergency fund account, which will be used to assist farmers who are severely affected by disasters. For evacuations that are related to medical and natural disasters, the service turnover tax is exempted. Budget resources are also allocated towards disaster risk and climate change adaptation initiatives, which include the construction of seawalls in small outer islands and relocation of coastal villages to higher ground. We have moved 3 villages already at a cost of some 2 million Fijian dollars, but we will need to work with international aid partners to relocate all 45 villages that have been earmarked that are in the path of encroaching seas. In addition, we shall also set aside funding for maintenance of our flood yearly warning system. I'm glad to say that we are doing some work, in particular regarding the Nadi region with the Japanese government at this stage. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that climate change and sea level rise are not just crises looming on the horizon. They are with us now. What looms on the horizon is even greater disaster if we do not seriously confront this challenge. We Pacific Island nations are among the most exposed, the most vulnerable. We are specks of land surrounded by the Pacific, not vast continents. Greater resiliency, of course, is important under any circumstances, but resiliency alone is not enough. We welcome the support of the developed nations in helping us become more resilient, but we must insist that they do more to decrease the need for resiliency by committing to significant reduction of greenhouse gases. Fiji is doing its part as well as we can. In terms of policy direction, the Fijian government's Green Growth Framework has been designed specifically to support environmentally sustainable development. Building resilience to climate change and disasters is one of the focal areas of this particular framework, which was recently launched in the vernacular languages also a few weeks ago by the Honourable Prime Minister. We can all recognize the critical challenges that Pacific Island countries face, particularly the financial constraints and distress caused by natural disasters. Most Pacific Island nations have few options for securing immediate finance for swift post-disaster emergency response without compromising their long-term fiscal sustainability. Moreover, borrowing capacity and access to international insurance markets is limited, and that compels governments to bear the burden. I hope that we will be able to address some of these critical issues, and I'm sure some of them have already been addressed in the workshops in the course of our discussions today. Peer learning and collaboration is an important aspect of these interactions, and I hope that this is an area we can continue to strengthen by working together and indeed being quite creative about this. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it seems like there is too much work to be done. Our people need a great deal from us, particularly the poorest amongst us, the most vulnerable amongst us, the people indeed who live in remote areas and in a subsistence economy, the people who live in informal communities, the infirm and the handicapped. We cannot do everything at once, but we must be prepared to shield them as much as possible from natural disasters, epidemics, and other catastrophes. Just by way of digression, at the moment, we have a national development plan consultations. Fiji has not had a development plan since the first coup in 1987. We used to have 5-year development plans. We have now embarked on a widespread public consultations. In fact, if you pick up one of the daily newspapers today, you'll see meeting venues and schedule of all the meetings where the team from the Ministry of Finance, indeed the Permanent Secretary for Finance was there yesterday in some of the consultations, and they're going around Fiji. There's about 640 odd meetings that are being held throughout Fiji, where we are ascertaining from members of the public as to what their needs are, where do they think the future is, where do they think development should be focused on. And having heard all the views, then we will be able to put in place, in conjunction with an assessment of our financial capacity, our financial ability, to put in place a 5-year development plan and also long-term 20-year development plan. This will not only help us, but subsequent governments. It will help the people of Fiji. It will help all Fijians to understand where they are, where the development priorities are, and indeed it will help our multilateral partners and our donor agencies, etc., to know specifically where they can target their aid, what year, when, and how they can collaborate and partner with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have all been entrusted with a very sacred duty, and that is to ensure that we have that level of resilience and provide that capacity within ourselves and also to the public of Fiji and all the other Pacific Islands to help them meet these challenging times and mitigate the risks that come out from natural disasters. I wish you a very wonderful day, and a wonderful day for deliberations and consultations, and I hope you take some time out to enjoy the wonderful Fijian hospitality. Thank you very much.